Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a balmy June 9th here in suburban Chicago, and I am on my way to the library. Yay! Our library has opened back up for contactless pickup, so you can request things, and then you go to the library and you call them, and they bring them out and set them on a table, and you come get them. Nice. I'm also going to swing by my local game shop because they have announced that the last Mythos pack for the most recent Arkham Horror campaign has now come in, so I'm going to get that, and I'll have the end of the Dream Eaters cycle, and my wife and I can play that. Although we're a couple cycles behind. I think we have 3. This will make 3 that we can choose from, but we'll see which one she's excited about. In case you're hearing lots of background noise, it is cicada season here in Illinois, so the cicadas are out in full bloom and making tons of noise. So I sort of constantly have what sounds like a horde of aliens around buzzing at me. So that's fun. All right, so today, on this episode, I thought I would talk about a new game I've been playing a lot and compare it to an old game that I enjoy. When we went to the game shop last week, when they opened up, we decided to support local business a little bit. I picked up a discount copy of Valley of the Kings, which is a classic deck building game. I say classic, it's from like 2012, so it's not that old. But it's a well-regarded deck building game that's had 3 different versions come out, and they are standalone versions that you can mix together. So you could buy one of the 3 versions of Valley of the Kings, and then you can play it with the other ones. And then they released a premium edition, which is what I got, which the whole set comes in one box, and then it comes with sleeves as well, so you can sleeve the whole thing. Which is interesting because I don't generally sleeve my games, but it sure is nice. The feeling of that game sleeved is pretty nice. But they made the box too big. It's really annoying. They have this nice insert that you can put the cards into. They come with little dividers, so you can divide the card sets up very nicely. But then they made the trenches where the cards sit way too long, and they didn't give you anything to secure them, so like when I transported the game, the cards went all cattywampus inside the box because it's too big. Come on. I presume that when you release the premium edition of a game, you're not planning on releasing more expansions. So why do you have that extra space? Anyway, so we've played it 3 times now, and I really like it. And so I want to talk about it a little bit. I don't think I've talked about it quite enough to give it a message from the deep, but I have the general idea, so I can give it a fair discussion. It's a little more in-depth than shooting from the hip. At least I feel like it is. So I thought I would bring back a format I haven't done for a while, and that's Duel, where I pick 2 games of similar nature and compare them to one another. So here's our duel for today. Valley of the Kings versus Arctic Scavengers. So Valley of the Kings is from designer Tom Cleaver. It was published by AEG, and I have the premium edition, meaning I have both of the expansions, so I have all the card sets. Arctic Scavengers is from Robert Gabhart and is published by Rio Grande Games, and that one I also have the sort of omnibus edition that has the main game plus the expansion plus the other expansion. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of each game, and we can then compare them and talk about them. So both games are from the deck building genre. Both games are relatively new in the field, relatively early in the field. Arctic Scavengers came out within a couple years of Dominion. Valley of the Kings a little bit later, but both of them operate on the same Dominion model, by which I mean you have a starter deck that's the same as everyone else's. You have a set of cards that you put out, and everybody buys from the same set of cards. Each game has a twist as well, however. In Arctic Scavengers, you have a stack of sort of super good cards that you are going to battle with other people to get. And those cards are unique, or mostly unique, and secret. So each round, one person knows what the secret card is, the other people don't, and you kind of lean on one another to decide whether to battle for that card or not. The expansion adds buildings and leaders, which I think make the game really good. And there's also a variety of different cards, so you can decide which card sets you want to have in play. Like Dominion, the card sets are put out in a market at the beginning, and you can buy any of them when you have the available resources. Valley of the Kings has two innovations from this model. The first is that you mix all of the cards that can be purchased together. So instead of having them available in a stack, or available in individual stacks, they're all mixed together, and what's available to you depends somewhat on the draw. But then it's got this pyramid mechanism where there are 3 cards available, and above that on the table are 2 cards, and above that on the table is 1 card. When you buy a card, you have to buy it from the bottom row, and then the other cards crumble down the pyramid, and then at the end of your turn, the pyramid is rebuilt for the next player. So you have a limited choice of cards you can buy, but it's also shaped heavily by which cards you choose to buy. The other innovation that I really like in Valley of the Kings is that each card has a power on it. The powers vary in quality, and each card also has a currency on it, and each card is worth points. Either it's worth points by itself, individually, or it's worth points as part of a set. So on your turn, with the 5 cards in your hand, you have 3 options. You can play any of the cards in your hand for the points that they give you, or for the action that they give you. And that would let you maybe rearrange the pyramid, or draw another card, or do all sorts of different things. The second option you have, and you can do this once automatically every turn, is to entomb a card, which means to take one of the cards you have and put it in your tomb. The third option you have is to buy a card, and you're allowed to buy as many cards as you like each turn. And the thing is, when you spend the card for its currency, you don't get to spend the card for its power. So unlike something like Legendary, where when you play a Legendary card, you get the fight points and the money points for each card you play. In Arctic Scavengers, or in Valley of the Kings, you only get one of the things. You either get the money or the action, not both. And if you entomb the card, you can't have played it first. So there's a real balance where the more expensive cards have better powers on them, but you want to get them into your tomb because they only score if they're in your tomb. And this is the big twist on the game, is that each card you have, like I said, it scores points by itself, or it scores points as part of a set. And the set scoring is pretty simple. You just count how many distinct cards you have from a set and square that. So if you have five cards from a set, you get 25 points. If you have 6 cards, you get 36, etc. But they need to be unique from the set. So if you have multiples of the same card in your tomb, that doesn't do anything for you. And they have to be in your tomb. And this is the tricky part. Like I said, the big power cards, you don't want to put them in your tomb because then they're in your tomb. And you can't use them anymore. But if you wait too long, then you won't be able to get all the good cards you took into your tomb and they won't score points. Really interesting game. All right, so now you have an idea of the 2 games and how they work. I want to talk a little bit about where they succeed and where they need work. So let me think. You know, the games are very similar in several ways. They both use 5 cards in hand. They both have you use your whole hand and then draw a whole new hand. They both have you cycle the deck when you start. They both have very easy ways to thin your deck. In Arctic Scavengers, when you take the junk action, you can dump your cheap and easy to use cards into the junk pile, which allows you to make your deck more efficient. In Valley of the Kings, there are quite a few cards that allow you to trash or sacrifice cards out of your deck. And again, this makes you more efficient. In both cases, those cards are worth nominal points, so there is some value to them. But it's really a balancing act of how quickly do you get rid of them, how aggressively do you thin your deck. Each game has its own unique flavor that I think fits the theme really well. Arctic Scavengers has this idea of limited resources, of trying to recruit people, and then of these central super valuable things that you have to battle other teams for. Valley of the Kings, you play these nobles preparing your temples, and so there's palace intrigue, which kind of explains why you and the other people are fighting with each other, or why you're interfering with each other in really significant ways, trying to get the most glory for your tomb. And the mechanisms feel really neat. Like the buildings in Arctic Scavengers, the way they work is when you want to build a building, it costs a certain number of cards, and so you just take cards off your deck and put them on that building. And then each round you automatically get to take one card off that building and put it in your discard. And once all the cards are off, the building is built. You can use actions to pull more cards off the building, but then of course you have less cards to use, so you build the building at the expense of a turn or two. Valley of the Kings has, like I said, this really interesting balance between how much of your resources do you abandon into your tomb versus how much of your resources do you reserve to use. Art-wise, both games fit their themes really well. The art in Valley of the Kings Premium Edition is gorgeous. I can't say that I know anything about the art of the regular games, so I don't really know what it looks like. The Valley of the Kings uses the premium or the tarot style cards that are slightly longer and wider than, say, Magic cards. So there's plenty of room for the art, and the typeface is nice and big. It's easy to play. It does mean that the game takes up a bit more room on the table than it probably does if you buy the smaller edition. But it's pretty swell. As to downsides, both games are pretty tight. I like them both very much. I don't see a significant amount of downside to them. I would say one thing is both games probably have the problem of if you play them a lot, you're going to get much better at them than people who haven't played them much. Just because the games demand expect a certain level of familiarity with what's happening in the game. And so that would be a big thing that I would caution, is if you're going to play this very much, you really want to make sure that you are either explaining it to other people well, or trying to play with other people who've played the game quite a bit. If you have the opportunity to play them, I would recommend either one. I think they're both great in different ways. I find so far, at least in the plays I've had, it feels like Valley of the Kings has a bit more room for a variety of approaches. I feel like Arctic Scavengers, everybody's kind of fighting over the same few things, and so the variety of approaches feels less significant. Whereas in Arctic Scavengers, in Valley of the Kings, there are a wider variety of things to battle for. Well, that's about my time for this episode. If you have played either of these, I would love to hear from you. If they remind you of other deck builders, or you think there are other deck building games I should try, I would love to hear those as well. You can reach me on BoardGameGeek with the username Wombat929, or let me know what you're thinking about as other games I might want to play in this field. So, thanks for joining me today, and I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by
Rattlebox Games.